Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the May 9th City of Norwalk Public Library Board of Directors meeting. It is now 7:12 p.m. In attendance, we have Janie Williams, Patsy Brescia, Laura Peterson, Alex Knopp, Ralph Bloom, and we have two guests with us tonight, Maria Coppola and Lamont Daniels. Is anyone here for public comments?
Yeah, and I just want to say again that Mary will not be in attendance on tonight's meeting because she's attending the NAACP town hall meeting in Westport.
Okay. Thank you. And so no one here for public comments. I'm gonna move straight on to and I'll talk about the last time's minute meeting notes after we have our first item on the agenda, which is a discussion with Corporation Counsel on the role of the board. So uh over the past several years, there's been many occasions when there has been some lack of clarity around the role of the board vis-a-vis the city. So we have invited Corporation Counsel, Maria Coppola here, along with Chief of Community Services, Lamont Daniels, to our meeting tonight to begin a discussion. They will talk a little bit to begin with. There will be some time for question and answer. And also I've asked Mario to talk give a little bit of kind of an orientation as well to some of the um, around some of the legal issues that the board should be aware of. So Mario, would you like to take it from here?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for um, inviting me to your meeting this evening. I guess first and foremost, I'd like to give you just a very brief update on acquisition of property for parking in the area of the main library. We worked diligently with your board on that for many years now. And There's certainly been a lot of time I've spent with Alex and others on it. As you know, we have the parking lot area behind the library that was acquired through eminent domain, a portion of property owned by Mr. Milligan. You may have read about it in the newspaper at some point. And then We also are in the process of acquiring the taxing district property at 3 Belden. We've had a contract for some time. We've received all the required approvals from the municipal city boards and commissions, and we have a tentative closing date set for May 28th. So we anticipate getting that closed by the end of the month. I will caution you that that's not an official date. It's a tentative closing date. I don't even think I've shared that yet with the mayor's office because I just confirmed that a little while ago today. But we were working through some issues, particularly concerning an oil tank at the property, and we've done environmental testing, and we've been working through various issues at the property, including the environmental issue, and gotten to a point where we feel satisfied that we've resolved all the issues. The district has worked with us in good faith to do so, and we're excited that we'll be closing hopefully at the end of the month. If it does get delayed, it may just be a week or two, but I see no reason why it will not close during this physical year. So we anticipate having that happen, and Moina will certainly be in touch with you to let you know when the closing date goes hard and we know it's when it's absolutely going to happen.
I just like to take a moment to say that we have been working very closely with Corporation Counsel, and we are very grateful for all of the work. We know that there has been a ton of work from your office that has gone to get us to where we are right now, and we are grateful for the partnership.
I appreciate that. It has been a partnership. We've worked together. It's been not an easy process, but we've certainly secured land surrounding the library that I think everybody agreed critical to the future of the library. And so I'm glad that we've been able to do that. There's been many meetings over the last 10 years, and I'm glad that we finally got there. And you know, at the First Taxing District, for whatever it's worth, also Brian McCann, who was our former assistant corporation counsel in our office, has been really helpful to us in trying to get that done as well with the First Taxing District. So kudos to a lot of people for that. One of the reasons I was asked to come, aside from providing I guess it's to provide a brief orientation, and I didn't provide any materials in advance. I didn't want to give a long presentation. I just wanted to hit on 3 issues. One was just to go over, reiterate powers of the library board. 2 was just to very quickly give you some important points on a refresher on the Freedom of Information Commission, on FOIA rules, especially since I believe you have some new members. And lastly, just to briefly go over conflict of interest. FOIA and conflict of interest are general things that we address in orientations with any boards and commissions that we do, with any of the city boards or commissions, and quite frankly, with the boards and commissions that I represent in other communities throughout Fairfield County. So briefly, with regard to powers of the library board, for those of you who've been on the board for some time, I think you know what those are. They're set forth out in the ordinance 87-1, and it provides that the board shall make rules and regulations for the government of the Norwalk Public Library, and shall have the care and supervision of the grounds, rooms, or buildings constructed, leased, given, or set apart to the Norwalk Public Library for library purposes. And the city's ordinance tracks the language set forth in the underlying statute, which is 11-33, which provides the underlying authority. And those are the mandated powers for a library board. There are other discretionary powers that the statute allows the library board to have, which are not set forth in the Norwalk ordinance. There's some library boards which have more power than we do in Norwalk, but this is the power that the Norwalk Library Board has, and I think it makes sense to the extent that there is, obviously, the library is a department of the city, and so what are what's the role of the library board based on its authority? And I think one way to look at it is, and this is similar to a statement that New Haven actually has, that Moynihan had pointed out to me with regard to its library board. So with regard to the first part, shall make rules and regulations for governing the public library. I think that would be powers essentially to set policy, strategic planning, advocacy. So making rules and regulations for a government of the public library allows you to set the policy, to do strategic planning, and also, I think, to be an advocate for the programming and funding of the library. The second part is shall have the care and supervision of the grounds, rooms, or buildings constructed, leased, given, or set apart. Obviously, you know, the library board is not supervising the janitorial staff. It's not literally upkeeping the buildings, but certainly how the buildings are used has to be approved by the library board. And so, for example, you know, if there was a proposal to shut down a library branch or to do something with a particular library building, that would have to get approval from the library board. So again, the board sets policy, strategic planning, advocacy, and also has authority with regard to use of library properties. Our ordinance also provides that the library board could provide an advisory budget to the BET which you do on an annual basis. There are things that the library board does which go beyond the powers of the library board, depending on, how the administration wants to work with the library board. In my experience over the last 10 years, this current mayor has, quite often had the library board do things that were not required for the library board to do, but that the mayor had wanted the library board to participate in, such as in the interview process for hiring your director. So while there are certain powers that are required for the library board to have, what the library board does is not necessarily limited by those powers. Certainly where it makes sense, there's opportunities for the library board members or the board as a whole to do more. And quite often, at least this administration has desired to work to use the library board to do more to help the development of the library system and expanding programming and the properties. So that's my fairly quick review of powers for the library board. Is there any questions in that area before I move on? Okay, so
Well, questions or comments? You just want a question
yeah, I
on
mean,
it?
it's not a quiz. I mean,
No, yeah, well, hopefully, as you know, I've been advocating that we have a meeting with you folks for quite a while. Because what's in our book goes back 10 years to September of 2014. And there's been, with new members on the board, trustees on the board, there's been a lot of confusion in many of our discussions. What are our powers? What are our responsibilities? So I'm very grateful that you now have been able to come and address us for that, to let us know exactly what we can do and what we should do and what we technically do not have the power to do. So personally, I want to thank you very much. And it is very confusing because of the state statute for libraries is in some places conflicts with the city's ordinances and charter. So that's where all the confusion, I think, comes in.
well, in addition to the mandated powers set forth in the underlying statute, the statute provides that library boards may be permitted to perform other duties, and those other duties set forth in the statute were not adopted in Norwalk's ordinance. So there's mandated powers that a library board has to have, and those powers are set forth in the ordinance. And there's additional powers that a library board could have, which are not set forth in the Norwalk ordinance. But these issues become confusing. Let me put it this way: over the last 11 years, in my experience, there's been times where council members, for example, have not fully understood their role with regard to city staff, for example. And so, this is something that comes up, where, for example, the council is the legislative body of the city, but there's certain positions that have to get appointed by the council, as set forth in the charter or ordinances. But the supervision of any staff members is by the administration, and the council doesn't have any duties in that regard. And sometimes folks get a little confused with that. But anyways, moving on, with regard to FOIA, just to hit on some basics, I've been asked to do that. So the library board is a public agency, so you're subject to the Freedom of Information Act. I believe you know that. And the provisions of the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, are set forth in Connecticut General Statute 1-200 through 1-259. And under FOIA, public agencies must hold public meetings. Obviously, you understand that you hold public meetings, you have to provide public notice, etc. One issue that comes up is, at what point can you go into executive session? your library board has in fact gone into executive session in recent years, there's certain carve-outs under FOIA which allow you to do so, to have communications as a group, or meeting as a group outside of a public meeting, and to do so in executive session. That would be, for example, to discuss pending litigation, to discuss threatened litigation, to discuss a personnel matter, to discuss the purchase, sale, the potential acquisition or disposition of property, which would include a purchase, a sale, a lease. And over the years, as we've discussed, potential acquisition of properties around the main library, there have been executive sessions that your board has held to discuss potential acquisition. Certainly that is within your rights to do so in executive session. Communications amongst the group. One thing to always make sure folks are careful about is if you're discussing library business, an email amongst the quorum of you actually is a meeting, and so you shouldn't be discussing substantive library business, substantive board business via email. Having said that, it's permissible to do email communications for scheduling and for non-substantive issues, which is understandable to do. With regard to emails, I always want to remind boards and commissions that if you use your personal email for your city business that you do as part of a board or commission, that personal email would be subject to a FOIA request. So if you had to do a search, it would be done on your personal email. You have to be careful because that personal email or device could be also subject to discovery, for example, if there was litigation involving your board. With the library board, it's highly unlikely that would ever happen. I think for like the Planning and Zoning Commission, they have to be much more careful and absolutely use a city they should be using a city email for any business. I think with certain other boards and commissions that are less prone to be involved in litigation, such as your board, it's understandable that somebody may want to use their personal email address and not a city issued email. Alex?
Yeah, thank you, Mario. On that topic, recently the city canceled all city emails for non-employees. And I think that's a problem because I think what you raised is very accurate. So when I got on the board, I asked the city for a city email. I know Moynihan did the same thing, because that would allow us to use that for library business. About 3 weeks ago, I couldn't log on to my city email, and I contacted IT. They said, as a cost-saving measure, the city had canceled all non-employee city emails. I think that might be penny wise and pound foolish.
I agree. My understanding was that in preparation for this meeting, I had a brief discussion with Moyna and Patsy and Lamont, and I brought this issue about city issued email addresses, and I think it was confirmed that there are city issued email addresses for certain boards and commissions, for example, Planning and Zoning. Lamont, could you?
Well, let me just finish, if you don't mind, but before Lamont comments, because we did have litigation in the last year, which is when a library employee brought a complaint to the Human Rights and Opportunities Commission, being handled by Jeff Spar. She claimed religious discrimination based on the denial by the executive director of the library for certain work hours and time off. And Jeff told us.
Point of reference, it wasn't the director. But go ahead.
Well, it's before you were involved. I mean, let me say that. Well, I mean, whoever, nonetheless, Jeff contacted some of us on the board and said that we were possibly going to be interviewed by the CHRO investigator and by the attorney for the plaintiff in that case. So even though we're not as subject to litigation as P and Z. Nonetheless, it could happen. And I think it's a good idea that for official business with the library, we have the opportunity not to use our personal emails. Sorry, Lamont, just wanted to give an example of.
And by the way, I just, before Lamont comments on logistically what we're doing with the city, I agree with everything you've said. And I have advised the city over the years that anybody who serves on a board or commission should be offered a city email address, and that it should be mandated for certain boards and commissions, such as the Planning and Zoning Commission. So what you've said is consistent with the advice that I've given. And I was unaware that the IT department was taking away email addresses. So hopefully, Lamont, could you shed some light?
Yeah,
on
I don't have anything to add, but just to say, Alex, to your point, I was made aware of that just recently as well. And so I have a meeting with IT next week, to Mario's point, that giving legal specifications as pointed out, that we are recommending strongly to reinstate your emails. I knew there was some discussion around, because now we have .gov and some people were being locked out. So if you were actually told that, that's something new information, but I'll definitely raise that again on Monday when I have my meeting with IT over
Good,
the
thanks.
department.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
got
and
it.
by the way, I have not seen or heard anything that we were taking away city email addresses from folks because of a budgetary issue. So when this first came up a few days ago with regard to setting up this meeting, yeah, I said to Lamont, we should look into it and figure it out. So I not just for this board, but I'd like to know for all other boards and commissions of the city if in fact that was done. So we'll figure that out. But we'll endeavor to be able to offer city email addresses back to everybody on this board.
Good.
Absolutely.
With regard to conflicts of interest, I will keep it very, very brief. I don't think conflicts will come up, quite frankly, as often with the library board as with other boards and commissions, like your Board of Assessment Appeals, Planning and Zoning, other land use boards and commissions, but it's possible. So let me just quickly review with you. So each of you is a city official in your capacity as a member of the board, and it makes you subject to our city ethics ordinance. And so if you violate that, somebody could file a complaint against you and you'd be subject to our ordinance. Each member but the bottom line is, when it comes to conflicts, each member must decide whether he or she has a conflict or a appearance of conflict, which might disqualify them from participating in consideration of a certain matter. So conflicts exist for whatever reason when a board member is compelled to consider a decision the board has to make differently than he or she would if it was someone else involved. So for example, reasons for conflict could be personal, financial. Just to give you an example, if there was a vendor who had a proposed contract with the library board, and the vendor happens to be a family member, you would have a conflict. If they're an in-law, you would have a conflict. Even if you don't like your in-laws, you still have a conflict. If it was somebody that you have a business relationship with, or your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your significant other has a relationship with, you've got a conflict. And so I think the actual conflicts are easier to decipher. They're pretty obvious. I think where it becomes a little bit more difficult is appearance of conflict. And so in order to make sure that we continue to have trust in our public institutions, it's important that, and the case law basically makes that public policy point when it addresses appearances of conflict. You have to recuse yourself not just for an actual conflict, but for an appearance of conflict. So even though if someone comes before you, your next door neighbor, you don't really have much relationship with them, for something that they request with the library board, you may say, I don't really have a conflict, but you would have the appearance of conflict because it's your next door neighbor. Same thing, a family member whom you don't have a close relationship with, it's still a family member. You've got at least the appearance of conflict. I think the prudent approach is to abstain if you're in doubt, or to seek advice from the Corporation Counsel's office. So if it ever comes up that you have a conflict or a potential conflict, you're welcome to contact me or any of the other assistant corp counsels in our office. We could communicate with you about it confidentially and provide you with advice. Ultimately, the decision is up to you as a member of the board as to whether or not you want to recuse yourself from an appearance of conflict or an actual conflict. Any questions on FOIA or conflict of interest? Okay. So we wanted to not have this meeting. I was asked to come to be able to respond to questions or to have an open dialogue about topics. And then when we were talking about how to conduct and discuss this and go forward with discussions in this meeting, it was suggested that I at least make a presentation briefly on those 3 issues. I could certainly do a lot more, but I was asked to keep it brief, so I will. Moina,
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much. I appreciate
start?
that. That was a good, high level summary of those things, and all very useful, and I'm sure useful for especially some of our newer members on the board. So coming back to the first topic, I was so the things that the city in particular is kind of responsible for. You were talking about, well, we haven't gotten as much into personnel and budget. Could you just talk a little bit more about those 2 items and what, the city's role versus the board's role is on those 2 things?
Sure. With regard to the administration of the personnel in the library department, that is a power that's held by the administration. So essentially, it's the mayor's office that's provided. Is basically the supervisor of the department is Lamont's position, that chief level position, and then obviously your library director. So the hiring, firing, and day-to-day supervision of staff is within the authority and purview of Lamont's position and the library director. So with regard to personnel, because the library board does have the powers with regard to policy, strategic planning, and obviously as a role as an advocate, I think the library board could provide input to Lamont's position or to library director with regard to staff. But ultimately, those decisions, whether to hire, fire, and day-to-day supervision, are again within the purview of Lamont's chief position, the library director, and obviously the mayor that ultimately the chief reports to. So were there further questions on the personnel side?
Yeah, it's Patsy. I can't get my hand thing to work, but most everybody within the department are union or at a different level for negotiation with the city.
That's another
Most-
important point. Everybody within the department, with the exception, everybody within the department is a member of the union. Everybody within the department is subject to collective bargaining. So it's obviously imperative that the administration of personnel is done in a certain orderly manner and complies with the provisions of the applicable collective bargaining agreement for that employee, depending on what union they're part of. So I appreciate you bringing up that point as well.
Yeah.
That's a very important one.
Yeah.
So again, hiring, firing, supervision, determination of job duties, et cetera, are within the purview of the administration. However, with the library's board's powers for policy and strategic planning, I think it is appropriate for the library board to provide input, while ultimately not having decision-making powers, certainly to provide input. But having said that, to make sure that that input doesn't in somehow violate anyone's collective bargaining rights. And also just the efficient administration of the department. So that's on the personnel side. On the budgetary side, the board submits a advisory budget. Ultimately, the determination of the budget for the department is within the purview of the BET. Obviously, Lamont, maybe you could give a little bit more insight as to the budgetary process, just really quickly, stepwise. How does that work with the library department?
Yeah, I'm using my phone tonight and I'm at my church, so thank you all. So I think what I have shared with Sherelle and through the board, like the board should be involved working with Sherelle on a budget proposal. However, ultimately, we go through our budget process. That's with the mayor's office, that's with the CFO. But as you all know, both BET and the Common Council, those are approval. But to Mario's point, I also have encouraged that the board should speak at public comment and because there's sometimes, for example, the mayor has asked the departments to cut 0.5%. And I know some of the board members said, well, we need that money. So I mean, I serve at the pleasure of the mayor, so I have to follow my boss's rules. However, I think the board has an advantage to advocate, and I have shared with many of you, encourage you to advocate, because we've seen since my tenure over the past 5 years, sometimes having you all at some of these meetings can make that difference. And so, I would encourage the board to continue to engage with Sherelle during the budgetary process, meaning making a recommendation. But tomorrow's ultimately the mayor's office, through the CFO's office, through BET and Common Council will actually set the approval, but should take advantage of public comment, as many constituents do in other budgets and other issues that are important to them that we have seen, both BET and Common Council be responsive. Hope that was helpful.
Thank you. Others, questions with regard to personnel? Budgetary issues? What else do you have that you'd like us to discuss?
Well, I thought maybe, I mean, I know we're about to get into a like a renovation, for example. I imagine that would be a joint project, or could you talk a little bit about how other boards and commissions work on something like something on that scale?
I think that, yeah, I mean, maybe the best analogy would be like the Board of Education. But obviously the city would be funding that type, any renovation or construction project, and there would be involvement from the board within the process. I see, Lamont, were you trying to say something? I think you're muted. No? Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, the library board would ultimately would be involved in the process. Having said that, the library board is not going to, essentially fulfill the role of like Alan Lowe on a construction project. So there's got to be professionals that are employees of the city that are charged with those tasks. So I mean, the bottom line is that the library board would have more input than generally another board or commission would with regard to a renovation or expansion project on a city property. And quite frankly, I mean, I know part of what your board does also is advocacy and advocacy for the funding that the city is not necessarily maybe required to provide for certain things, but that you'd like the city to provide for certain capital projects. And Moyne, I know you mentioned the role of advocacy of your board, and I think it's appropriate. Obviously, that the board has that role as well, and has, quite frankly, used that role effectively to get where we have, at least with some of the recent property acquisitions. Patsy?
Yeah, I'm bringing this up because I know, soon when we get going on moving our aspirations forward, the discussion is, what role would the foundation have in or expectation on and being a fundraiser to raise funds to assist with the project. So, I know it keeps coming up, so we might as well talk about it.
Sorry, what was their question, Patsy?
I think it was more of a comment, right?
Oh, it's just a
It's
comment.
really more of
Okay.
a comment and discussion that, that we've all talked about through the years, and looking forward, what role, what expectation, would there be for the foundation to raise money and contribute? That's a foundation decision ultimately, but I think it's important for us as a family of the Y to talk openly about what the expectation is or might be, or that we should discuss it in the future, or we put it off till the future. But I think it's has been an elephant in the room in several meetings. So I think it's wise for us to just chat about it.
Yeah, and I think I think we should have that, really have that conversation in the foundation first, and then and we have been, as many of you know, in the foundation, and what so we'll come back to you on that, the city vote. One thing I would like to talk about is a little bit more digging in on the personnel. As you know, we've kind of had some empty positions, and while I understand that the supervising is not a role of the board, and certainly getting involved in the day-to-day, but the fulfilling the mission of the library seems to be an important role of the board, and without the adequate personnel, that can't happen. So what, how does the board get involved in, well, I mean, certainly, we've been advocating, and for those positions, and like what else, what other kind of powers do we have around that? I guess is a question.
Quite frankly, the library board doesn't have powers with regard to personnel. It doesn't have the right to establish positions, to hire, to fire, to supervise, for those tasks. Having said that, with your role to make rules and regulations for the government of the public library, I think it's appropriate to be providing input to the administration as to positions, whether it be the creation of a position, whether it be to change certain duties with positions, but ultimately it's not within the purview or authority of the board to make those decisions. And again, employees of the library department are in fact city employees, all of which are subject to a collective bargaining agreement, are members of the full-time employees. I believe we're all members of a union. And so there's certain requirements that must be adhered to for the administration of personnel within the library department.
But like, what about things like getting, I mean, presumably, I mean, are we on our agenda today, we have staff updates to see where, you know, where we are in terms of filling roles and things like that. I mean, that is, I mean, I'm working under the assumption that that's an important part of our meeting, and to see that, that our library is fully staffed and,
And it is an advisory role, and it is an advisory role. There's no question about it. And it's beyond just giving advice. It's advice, quite frankly, that I think is adhered to. And if somebody's going to be successful in the position of library director or the chief position that Lamont holds, they're going to have to work with the library board, and if they want to be effective in their position. So those items that you're talking about, I think, are important for your board's time and consideration. But ultimately, for example, if somebody within the department is going to get hired, it's not mandated by ordinance that that your board approves the position, correct?
understood. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, but having said that, when we had posted the position for the library director, my understanding is that the library board was actively involved with the process, basically partnered with the mayor in the process. It was my understanding, correct?
Yep. Yeah,
So,
we
I
were
mean,
very, very involved, in fact, you know,
quite frankly, you're decision makers within the process because you move forward candidates to the mayor, correct?
that's right.
Yeah, so, you know, the practice of the board has been to have an integral role with regard to personnel. Having said that, it doesn't necessarily mean the board has certain absolute rights. And the good news, I mean, I think sometimes we get too caught up in what are our powers, and I think that the positive to kind of to not lose sight of here is that this library board has had a great impact in the last 10 years that I've been involved with the city, or 11 years, a significant impact with regard to the library system, and with regard to programming, with regard to future development of this physical development, capital projects. So I think we want to be careful not to lose sight of that as well.
Are there any final questions? Because I think that maybe that's a good place to end.
I'll just have a final comment. I'm always available. I know Alex has been in touch a lot in the past. Patsy has sometimes. Moina, you have now since you've taken over as president. You know, to the extent that we could be of service to the board and help fulfill you know, the strategic planning and policies that you want to set, we're always give it our best effort to try to do so. And we're always available to you.
Alex?
Yeah, I just want to also thank Mario and the second Moina's compliments at the start of this meeting for his cooperation and partnership on securing the parking for the library. He was in the target once in a while, as I was, so I appreciate his courtesy and open communication with me and support for the project. So thank you, Mario.
My pleasure. I'm glad we've gotten this far. It's taken longer than I think we had all hoped, but it's happened. So we're there, and you know, I think it's a great thing for the library to have secured that property. Both you
For
know,
generations to come.
yeah, it's great. It's a great thing. So with that being said, again, we're always available to you as well. So if there's something you think of after this meeting, anybody could always be in touch as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Have a
a
good
lot.
evening, everyone. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was at our last meeting, our April 18th meeting, we had some technical difficulties. And it was not it was not considered a public meeting because the public could not access it through the Zoom link. So basically that's kind of a null meeting. And so we have included many of the items from the last time's agenda in this time's agenda. So just so that we have some of the discussion items for the record. Sherelle, there might be a little bit of redundance from last time.
No
But we can
redundant.
move through these things pretty quickly. So okay, so with that, so there are no minutes
Well,
from
well,
the
sorry,
April
Marna.
meeting.
So is there an agenda for tonight? I still can't find any.
I couldn't find it either.
I forwarded it to you.
I don't know what email you used. Maybe
Mm.
that's the email that.
Maybe. Well,
think-
we
I
got
did, I did receive it, so I don't know.
I received it as well.
Mhm.
Hold on. Patsy, did you not get the one I forwarded you?
No, I did. I got it and I printed it, and of course now I can't find it. So
Okay,
I'm
I
going
am
blind.
Alex, I'm gonna send you the board meeting agenda. Just give me a second. Sorry. Okay, Gmail.
Okay,
So Sherelle,
Yep,
I'm gonna turn it over to you.
got it. So first on the agenda is our capital and operating budgets, and there's been no change. Since our last meeting, everything that we discussed that was in both budgets are still there. So there's been no change in either budget yet.
When do those get approved?
I think capital has been approved, operating is usually May. I think May is the final approval. So the main library carpet, the vendor will begin work on Wednesday, May 22nd. And we had discussed closing the library for 2 days. It will be on Wednesday, May 22nd and Thursday, May 23rd. The library will be open thereafter. The vendor anticipates that the project will be completed by Tuesday, May 28th. The staff have begun packing their desks, and Vicki Otis has drafted a public notice for release. We had discussed the leaks in both buildings, and I'll just give a
Well,
brief.
there's furniture on there as well.
Yeah,
Furniture for
so we're
Janet.
working with a vendor, and I'm not quite sure they understand that we wanted a 3D or 2D rendering. We do have just a basic rendering if you want to see it. It's for the GNLV got a little further than the CAP project for the first floor at the main library, but I am working with them to give us a 3D rendering that's not available right now.
Yeah, I have a question on that. We got pictures of suggested furniture. Everybody got that? Yeah, and I can't tell the colors on the soft chairs, and I don't know if they blend with the new carpeting.
Yeah, that's what we need to go over. I sent the company a picture of the new carpet and just asked basically that we start over so that we
And do you know who the company is?
I didn't want to say, the company is
Okay.
Demco. No, it's fine. The company is Demco.
I'm
Demco,
sorry,
okay.
how did these pictures get sent? I don't recall seeing pictures of furniture.
I just got it today, Alex.
You did?
Did we all get
I
it?
didn't get anything.
Uh,
Yeah, where
I got it at 12:57. Everybody's name is on the email. Today's, no, April
I
30th.
would
I
have,
got
yeah. I sent a
April.
link so that you guys,
April 30th.
yeah. That was last month. So I did send a link for
Yeah.
everyone to see. It was just basically chairs and some tables.
Yeah.
But I
It,
think we need to start over basically so that we can have the ambiance. Like the chairs do have the arms that Alex mentioned, but I just think to match the rug and you know, to have some type of decor, I think we need to start over and to see if we can get a 2D or a 3D rendering.
And I just happened today, I believe, met the contractor for the Sono furniture.
Mm-hmm.
Greg, is it? Is it Greg from Mason?
Craig,
Craig,
yep.
yeah. So, but he's
Oh.
not involved with this project.
No, Craig,
He's just doing South Norwalk.
he's WB Mason, but
Yeah, right.
basically he worked under, it wasn't necessarily his design, he worked under
Yeah,
Silver
yeah,
Petroleum.
right, right. But I just wondered if he's supplying South Norwalk, is there any, you know, would that firm be a possibility to buy furniture from?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and then in addition, so I don't forget it, I was walking around along the river in the Descala project at the head of the harbor today, and I noticed they have a really lovely metal bench, all black, nice graceful design. It's on the east side of the river, very close to Wall Street.
Okay.
I had not been down there for some time and but this Mason company is approved by the state of Connecticut.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's also helpful, just for the record, yeah.
Yep. And because the project is 20,000, we'll go out to bid anyway.
Okay.
So thank you for that.
And Patsy, were you kind of saying that the benches might be a good look, like for
Yeah, it was
for
very
furniture?
graceful, very simple, easy to keep clean, curved, seat, not straight back kind of. And I know you're talking to the city about what they're doing, but I just happened to see it today and because I was meeting with this supplier for furniture for the mansion under state contract, and he mentions two in South Norwalk, and I was surprised he did the library furniture
Yep.
for our project.
Okay. Awesome. I'll have a look. I'll walk down and have a look. Okay, so just again, the vendor will begin the main library replacement of carpet on Wednesday, May 22nd. And the library will be closed Wednesday, May 22nd, the first floor, May 22nd and May 23rd. I met with supervisors, so we all have our roles to play in moving things around for the day and making sure that business, operates as usual for those 2 days. Most of the items will be moved downstairs and the meeting rooms will, take place upstairs in the chess room or the conference room.
Jarrell, I do have a question for you. The heavy furniture in particular, who is going to actually be moving it? I can get people to pack up the books that are on the sales counters.
Yeah.
They're cherry, they're very heavy. And
So the furniture will be moved by the company, by the vendor.
the vendor?
Ours, correct.
Okay,
So that's part of the contract. And as far as your packing, Ralph, for your books, we'll have to have building services help you.
Well, I can get a volunteer or two. All we're gonna do is pack them into boxes so they're gonna be put back on later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I just wanted to check to make sure because I watched those shelves come in and boy, they were bloody heavy.
Yeah.
And some of our fixtures, such as what we call the spinners, they're on wheels, but they can't be moved when they're loaded with books. We've got to get the weight factor off them so they can be rolled out of the way.
We're not going to move. They're going to cover the stacks, but the items will have to be moved, like the items in the clerk office and the freestanding items on the floor.
All right, then we'll concentrate on the things which we know have to be moved, and we'll get the books off of them so they can be moved.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And let me know if you need building services to help at all.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Is the children's section going to be open?
Yes.
Yeah.
Children's section in the basement. It's just the first floor.
Okay.
So a lot, like the new books, a lot of the items will be moved downstairs. So people, when they come in, they can still go downstairs or upstairs. They just won't be able to access the first floor. And just for 2 days.
Great. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I can't wait. So as far as the leaks in the building, Guardian had provided temporary repair to the front windows at the main, to the front door and windows at the main library, which looks very bad right now. They wanted to stop the water infiltration. They don't want to fix anything right now because if we fix it and we still have the leaks, we're not sure if the leaks are stopped. The problem will repeat. They've opened the ceiling to provide an inspection point and suspect that there's an issue with the small roof above the doors, and that's been going on for quite some time. Once the leaks have been stopped, they'll patch and paint the ceilings. The rear windows, there was some leaks back there, not as bad as the front doors. Both sets of windows should be addressed as part of the renovation to the facilities. And there are additional items, that need to be addressed, such as the main roof replacement, the passenger elevator modifications, foundation wall, water infiltration, and removal of the old elevator lift. And then so before I go to Sono, so I think we had discussed the walkthrough with Guardian, and I think that will be helpful to know what we can do now. We are having a renovation, but we need to do something now. So we need to determine what that will be. So I'll set that up with Neil. I was planning to send him the former walkthrough that addressed some of these issues back in 2022. So
will
invite him to our next meeting?
Or, I mean, we can, if you let us know when the walkthrough is, I would like to also be a part of that.
Sure.
And maybe also ask him if he can come to our next meeting.
Yeah. I was gonna ask that. Okay. And so as far as Sono, there's a leak outside the second floor community room. It's been reduced but not fixed. There was a roofer on site on April 9th to investigate. I don't have the updates for that, so that's when I speak to him, that's something that I'll follow up on. We did report leaks. There were more leaks on the first floor, and you all saw it when you came downstairs after the last meeting. So definitely lots of leaks to take care of. Let's see. So Norwalk Poet Laureate, we're excited, to get started.
Sorry, what about I'm sorry, Cheryl, what about the reopening update?
I have to have a meeting with them next week. I'm just not sure right now. It looks like the furniture's in, but they haven't installed the kiosk yet. So there's other things that need to be done. So I need to get their timeline for finishing. My thought is June, like June 1st, but I meet with them next week.
Yeah. And, I can't get my hand to work. Obviously, it would try to get some dates with the mayor now because,
Okay.
yeah. We want to set a date and then he can't
Can't
come.
make it, right, okay. Just writing that down.
And Lamond, of course, the obvious people. Council.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just in like, it's good because it's like in time for summer, and I know a lot of people
Yeah.
come to the library over during the summer, especially young people.
All right. And
Be a cool place to hang out.
it's really nice. I love
Mhm.
it.
Cool and cool.
Cool and cool, yes. Poet laureate submission deadline, May 31st. Panel review from June 1st to June 30th. And the announcement July 1st-ish. I think it was July. I can't remember if it was the 1st or the 2nd. July 1st, which is a Monday. In time for and we didn't get it together in time to announce in April, which is National Poetry Month. But I think this is just as good because it's the new fiscal year. So pretty excited about that. And as far as staffing updates, custodian has been made an offer. No start date as yet because the person he works with in personnel is on vacation. But he's been made an offer. Let's see.
What about the part-time custodians? Nothing on that
You
yet?
know what? I don't know if they've made those offers yet. I don't think they have as yet because one of them actually called. So I guess that offer has not been made yet. So hopefully when she returns from vacation, the part-time, they'll make the offer for the part-time. We have the accounts clerk too, Michelle Whitson, who comes to us from the city controller's office. And we have just been plugging away, worked very well together and just, getting bills paid and establishing new procedures. So she's been with us, I guess, for 2 weeks now.
Yeah, it was nice to see her little desk space. There's some life in that space, so that's good.
Yeah. Branch manager, we've identified the candidate that we want to make the offer, but it has not been made as yet.
And Sherelle, how do you make that happen?
I was gonna
No,
say
we
the
just
same
have
thing,
to,
Nancy.
we have to wait for the person to come back from vacation.
Mhm.
And
But
when
I don't understand that. There should be somebody that, and if you in our HR, there should be someone who backs her up. I don't get that. That's gotta be the most mismanaged HR ever, because there should be
I think,
somebody
yeah,
that does.
they are, but they're pretty short staffed. So
Doesn't matter if if you have, it should be someone who is a backup to do that stuff. You should not have to, because what happens is that you get the candidate that you're going to pick, they get frustrated.
And they go somewhere else.
Yeah, so that should not happen. I'm sorry, it should not happen. There should be somebody that can take over and do that stuff while the person's on vacation. And I'm not getting on you about it. I'm saying that's just the HR
but
coming out.
and it could very
Doesn't
well
make
be
any
happening.
sense.
Yeah, it could very well be happening. So.
But Sherelle, can you ask for an update on all of those?
So I
Right
do know
away.
the update. So the branch manager has been identified. They just have to send the letter out.
Yep.
I hear what you're saying about
When
will
was
the
that,
letters go out? I gotcha.
that update?
Okay.
The board is looking for an update.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, as you know, the other two positions, the library assistant and the acquisitions manager, due to, budgetary, reasons, we didn't lose the positions, but we will get them January 2025. So So we can start advertising, you know, November, December, and be prepared to have those positions in place by January.
What, did we make any progress on the passport manager? The passport agent or whatever?
Not yet.
Okay.
And that's it for me.
Okay, any old business? New business? Can we get a motion to adjourn? Oh,
So
sorry.
move.
Alex, did you wanna?
Yeah, what's the status of the cafe RFP? Has it been
That's good.
closed? Did we get any responses? Is it not going out yet or what?
May 17th is the closing date. And we put together a little, like a graphic that we'll put on social media, just kind of advertising it.
Okay, somebody in one of the coffee shops I go to asked about how to apply for it, and I couldn't find it on the website under
Yeah,
the.
I had that same issue this last time around. The first time they had it, but the information wasn't there for them to click on. And this time I did have a hard time. So I had to just Google specifics, and I have it. I can send that if you like. I can
Yeah,
send
if you send it to me, then I'll get it to that person.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Anytime.
But shouldn't you get it back to the city to get them to get it up?
Yeah,
It's up,
Yeah.
but it's difficult to find. It is there. I can show it to you. It's just very difficult to find it.
And May 17th is like literally around the corner.
For sure.
I mean, like what happens if we don't get enough people applying for it? I mean, it
You
sounds
go
like
out to
we
bid
need to
again.
do some
You go
PR
out
or
to bid
something.
again.
I'm sorry?
You go out to bid again if you don't get bidders.
That would make sense.
Mm-hmm. And
Have we thought of putting some kind of a flyer?
yeah,
yeah.
we have one. We just finished it yesterday. Let me just see if I can find it.
Yeah.
Hold on one second.
Again, I don't know who's supposed to take care of that. I don't think it's supposed to be you.
It's well, they take care
Understand.
of the, you know, the other end. We just decided to do a flyer just to, you know, so we can post it on social media and on the website.
Mm.
One second.
Talk about mismanagement. Unbelievable.
Um,
Those people.
I'm concerned that if somebody can't find it on the website, like, is there, I mean, can you work with IT to at least see if they can make it a little bit more prominent or easy to find?
Yeah, I actually started drafting a letter. Hold on one second. Let me just.
How about a phone call?
People are it's very hard to get people to answer the phone these days. For some reason you call and you can't get answers.
Yep, that's mismanagement. I don't care
on
how you
one
look at
second.
it. It's mismanagement. That's what it is. They are not, I don't know what they're doing over there in that department, but they need to change their process or whatever.
Can
'Cause
you
they're
see,
terrible. That's just that.
can you see the screen, the shared screen?
Yep.
So that's one, hold on, so I have too many things up right now. Let me see if I can move this over. Okay. So that was one.
Oh, there's just so many of them. Are we gonna?
So we always try to do 2 or 3 and then, you know, just decide, you know, which one, or maybe we put different ones, social media, different, you know, one on the website. So, but just something very simple, and then they can, oh, hold on one second.
And is it gonna click to the place where they can
Yes.
apply? Okay,
Yep.
good.
That's why we decided to do that, just to make it easy for them to, I think it won't let me do it through here, but yeah. It's there, and let me just see, I started a draft to them that we can't find it, but I do have the link. So, I'll work on that tomorrow. And then
Again,
what I
I-
can do is I'll email as well and just, being proactive before the 17th, ask what happens or if we can even extend it now. I'm not sure that we can, but maybe we can extend it to June 1st.
well, I don't think it's your fault. I think, again, that's just mismanagement. They just don't know what they're doing over there. Really bad. That's just sad. Just really sad. Unbelievable. Should not be like that at all.
We'll get there.
Okay, any questions on that? All right, can I think we're done. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Amy, Laurel, Patsy, seconds, and so have a good night. We're not having a foundation meeting. And we'll be seeing you in a month's time, if not sooner. Okay, good night.
All right, good night.
everyone.